If you are a newbie in the gym and you don't necessarily know what you are doing, this video is for you. I'm going to turn you from a newbie into a beginner who knows what he is doing throughout this video, right? Everything is so much simpler than you think. You may be overcomplicating things because you don't necessarily know the really simple things, which I'm going to go over in today's video, and I'm going to give you clarity. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over with you guys how muscle growth works, what we need to prioritize as a beginner in order to start growing muscle efficiently, what workout program I recommend for beginners, how many times a week I recommend you as a beginner train, and then I'm going to be going over something that's very important for consistency. Let's get into it. Section number one is how muscle growth actually works, right? So muscle growth is a reaction to something else, right? And that basically means there are actions we need to perform, because as Newton's third law states, for every action, there is always an opposite or an equal reaction. In this situation, if we don't do certain things, then the reaction of muscle growth can't manifest. And the action that we need to carry out in order to force the reaction of muscle growth is muscle stimulation. All right, better you can stimulate your muscles, the quicker you will grow. And in other words, muscle stimulation basically just refers to activating our muscles during the exercise. So using your biceps when you're doing bicep curls, or using your chest when you're doing bench press, and basically just training as hard as you possibly can. And this is basically going to give our muscles no choice but to grow, right? And that's a mentality we want to have. We want to have the mentality of everything we do in the gym is so fucking good to the point where our muscles actually have no choice and they are forced to grow. And in order to activate and work our muscles to the best we possibly can and to work as hard as we possibly can, that brings me on to step number two, which is the two priorities that is going to help you stimulate your muscles to the best of your ability. And these two priorities, you're asking? Technique is king and progressive overload, right? Most people have the pre-assumption when they start the gym that the more weight they lift, the more muscle they're going to grow. But I can tell you from a relatively experienced standpoint that this isn't necessarily the case. Weight doesn't 100% contribute to muscle growth. There is another factor, and that is technique, right? I'm not saying that weight isn't important, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit later. However, you need to understand that the more weight you lift doesn't necessarily mean that you'll grow muscle. And that is because you need to make sure that your technique and the execution of the exercises and how you perform them is to the best it possibly can be, because that is what is truly going to stimulate and activate your muscle to the best you possibly can. For example, doing a really strict bicep curl, keeping your elbow in the exact same place, that is good technique, all right? Without technique, then the benefits of increasing the weight over time cannot manifest in your training. And another way I like to think about the importance of technique in terms of the gym is through golf, right? Golf isn't necessarily how far you can smack the ball contest, right? Golf is how precise you can be with your shots, how effective you can be with different golf clubs, and how effectively you can read the course, right? It's not about how far you can hit it, but how precise and how good your technique and swing is with the different golf clubs, so you can score the lowest on that golf round. And as a matter of fact, there is a world's longest drive competition in terms of golf. But let me just ask you this question. Why are the world's longest drivers not the best golfers in the world? It's because their technique and their precision with different shots isn't necessarily the best, right? They can only just smack the ball as far as they can go, right? And it's the exact same thing with the gym and the importance of technique. It's not about how much weight you can lift, but it's about how precise you can be with the weight you lift, right? Therefore, your first priority in the gym is to prioritize getting good at performing the exercises and actually doing them correctly and to the best of your possible ability, right? This is going to take years of repetition and practice. It has probably taken me up to 4 years of my training to the point where I finally started to click with my back training. But don't worry, this is completely normal. And if you don't feel your muscle properly, and if you feel a little bit awkward first off, then do not worry, that's completely normal. It's just like anything. You need to give it time and repetition to be good. For example, when you learn to drive a car, when you learn a subject in school, or when you learn how to do accounting at your job, it all takes time. You're not necessarily going to be good at it when you start, but you're going to get good at it eventually, right? And I've got 3 general tips that is going to help you with your technique in the gym. So the first thing is drop the weight and go lighter than you may think you can and really control the rep. right? Really focus on squeezing the bicep at the top of the movement and really going slow and controlled on the way down, right? You want to be mindful with every single repetition you do, and you want to try and focus your mind towards the muscle that is working, right? That is how you increase the activation of your muscle during an exercise over time. The second thing is, do not swing or use momentum when you're doing your exercises. For example, if you're doing bicep curls like this, then you're going to be doing the repetitions and moving the weight with the momentum and not the muscle. Therefore, you're going to be less productive. The final thing is actually ask people around you or friends or people online form tips, right? Film a set of bicep curls and ask people, how was this? What can I do better, right? This is how you are going to improve. If you are not necessarily sure on your technique, then you can join this community. It's completely free, and we've got people posting their workouts, posting exercise videos, asking for tips, asking for trips, and I personally give them video feedback. And if you want this video feedback, it's going to be the top link in the description. So that is the first priority, that technique is king. That brings me on to priority number 2, which is progressive overload. Progressive overload basically just refers to increasing the difficulty of your workouts in the gym bit by bit. When you progressive overload in the gym, this essentially introduces and presents your muscle to boundaries and limits that it's never been to before. You're constantly pushing your muscle to its limits and towards boundaries it's not familiar with. Therefore, it's going to be like a shock to the muscle, shock to the system for the muscle, right? It's gonna be like, hold on, I've never done this before, I shouldn't be doing this, right? Therefore, when you're recovering and after the session, your muscle's gonna know, I've now got to adapt so I can handle that weight that I've never used before, or that intensity that I've never trained at before. Therefore, that is how you force your muscle to grow back bigger and stronger. So in order to do this, we are going to progressive overload through reps and weight, right? So essentially, we want to be trying to get one more rep than we did last week, and we want to be trying to increase the weight as much as we possibly can, as frequently as you possibly can. So for example, one week, if you do 60 kilos for 6 reps on bench press, in order to increase the reps, you simply want to aim for 7 the next week. And then you want to keep going higher and higher, and then you eventually want to increase the weight. But you may be asking me, Ryan, how will I know when to increase the weight and when it is appropriate? This is where rep ranges come in. Rep ranges are your guiding light for progressive overload, and if you don't necessarily know what a rep range is, it basically just refers to the amount of reps you want to aim for on a specific exercise, and you will have rep ranges for every single exercise on a workout program you do. And let me give you guys a really simple example, okay? So on bench press, you may have a rep range of 6 to 8 reps, right? And in order to use progressive overload through our rep ranges, basically, you want to work your way up the rep range. So I've got an example for you. So week 1, you do 60 kilos on bench and you get 6 reps. And then week 2, you get 60 kilos for 7 reps. And then week 3, you get 60 kilos for 8 reps. Now, because you have hit the highest number in the rep range, or maybe even beyond that sometimes, this guy may have done 9 or 10 reps on a set, then you are now qualified to increase the weight slightly, right? So now, because he hit the top of the rep range on bench press, which is 6 to 8 reps, and he's got 8 reps, he's now qualified to increase the weight to 62.5 kilos. And because he has increased the weight, his reps are inevitably going to go back down to the lowest number in the rep range, which is 6, right? So essentially, you just want to keep working up the rep ranges. Then when you get to the top of the rep range or beyond, you basically increase the weight, and this will lead to you resetting on the rep range. You're not necessarily going to be progressing as linear as this. There are going to be times where you may get 1 less rep than last week, but that is completely normal. Don't stress it. This is just a perfect example. And I just want to disclaim before we move on to point number 3, that this is only effective if you make sure you've got the first priority in check, so you actually are performing the exercises somewhat correctly, right? Don't worry if you're not performing it 100% correctly. As I said, it's going to take years for you to really develop a good mind-muscle connection and really get the technique nailed down. However, if you are performing the technique somewhat correctly and you are applying this, then combine those two together and you are going to make so much progression, my friend. So now we know what priorities we need to have and what we need to do in the gym in order to grow muscle at the start. Now we can move on to how you're going to execute that by identifying workout plan, which is number 3. We need to identify a sole workout program and a set of exercises you are going to go into the gym on, and you are going to progress and improve on, right? And this is ultimately where most beginners shoot themselves in the foot. They overcomplicate things with the workout program, and they set themselves such a high bar to live up to the point where they'll inevitably crumble, they'll go off plan, and they'll go back to square one, and they'll wonder, what the fuck happened, right? So we want to make this as simple as possible, and I'm going to make this as simple as possible through giving you only 3 options, right? You can follow one of these 3 workout plans in particular. So the first one I'll recommend is push-pull legs. Push-pull legs basically stands for push day. You do chest, triceps, and shoulders, and the reason this is called push day is because you push the weight in order to activate these muscles. So when you're on bench press, you push the weight to activate the chest, you push the weight up on shoulder press to activate the shoulders, and you push the weight above you or down in order to activate the triceps. That's why it's called push day. The second day is pull day, so you do back and biceps. The reason this is called push day is, again, because you pull the weight in order to activate the muscles, right? So you pull the weight on lat pull downs, for example, in order to activate your back, or you pull the weight up in order to activate your biceps. And day 3 is leg day. Really simple, just train the muscles in your legs. It's as simple as that, right? The second split that I'd recommend for you guys is a upper-lower split. So on day 1, you train upper body. On day 2, you train lower body. And you'll repeat this twice, so you go to the gym 4 times a week. Or the final split that I'd recommend to you guys, split number 3, is a full body workout, and you can do this 3 times a week, and it's in the name. You just basically work a bit of all your body in a workout, right? If you are stressing about picking a split that you want to start with, and you're really stressing about what you think is the best one, I'm happy to tell you that there is no best workout split, right? A workout split's purpose is only to give you a plan and a structure, right? Your chest doesn't know whether it's working out with triceps, and it doesn't know whether it's working out on a Monday or a Wednesday, right? So pick which one sounds good to you, and that will be the best one for you, right? I personally started off my gym journey with push-pull legs, only going 3 times a week. However, as I said, it's completely up to you. And if you're not necessarily sure how this workout plan would look, there are 2 things that I have got for you guys. So in the free community I mentioned earlier, I have a free push-pull legs program that this man made his transformation on. So if you want to access that, you just sign up, it's completely free, and then you will get access to the split once you've done a couple of things inside the community. The second thing you can do is go to the link in the description where I say workout templates, right? So you can basically see what these workout plans would look like and what muscles you train, how many exercises for each muscle, etc, etc. But anyways, let's get back to point number 4, right? So now we know how muscle growth works, what we need to prioritize. You've now, I'm assuming, picked a workout program, and now I'm going to recommend to you how many times you want to be training every week. And as you're a beginner, I wouldn't necessarily suggest going to the gym many times, and there is a couple of reasons for that. However, I won't go into them right now because we want to keep things as simple as possible, right? But as a beginner, I'd recommend you go to the gym anywhere from 3 to 4 times every week. This is going to help you build up sustainable habits. It's going to help you build up your foundational layer in your gym journey. Therefore, you're going to be able to do this stuff for the long run, which is super important because ultimately the gym is a long-term game. You know that results don't happen like that, they take time. And in relation with the workout splits, depending on which one you've chosen, that will vary, right? So if you've picked push-pull legs, then you go 3 times a week, for example, push day on Monday, pull day on Tuesday, and then leg day on Friday. Or if you've done upper lower, then you'd go 4 times a week. So for example, upper day on Monday, lower body day on Tuesday, and then you do upper body day on Thursday, and then lower body day on Friday. Or if you've chosen full body, then you want to do that 3 times a week. So full body day on Monday, full body day on Wednesday, and full body day on Friday, right? It varies on the split you've chosen, but they are all just as effective as each other. So before I move on to the final point of this video, I want to make sure you understand the following things. And if you don't, go back in this video. So the first thing, you understand how muscle growth works. You then understand what you need to prioritize when you get in the gym. You've picked a workout program. You know how many times you're going to be going to the gym every week. Once you understand these, we can now go on to number 5, which is the importance of sticking to these exercises and this workout program for a prolonged period of time and not switching very quick, right? A really common mistake that a lot of beginners make nowadays is that because there's so much information online, there's one person saying, oh, try this workout split or try this exercise, and then there's another person that really contradicts them saying that, and then you do not necessarily know what to follow, and then you may see best workout split of 2026, and although you've only been on this workout program for 2 weeks, you switch and you do completely different things, right? You do not, I repeat, not want to be a sheep when it comes to fitness, right? And you've got to think about it like learning a skill. If you, for example, want to learn Spanish, but you only give it a week and then you get bored and then you try to learn French, or then you want to learn, you then want to read into philosophy, and then you want to learn how to play piano. If you keep switching things you do every week, you are not going to get good at them, or you're not going to get knowledgeable on any of them, or you're not going to make progress on any of them. Why? Because you haven't given them enough time. And the exact same thing applies with the gym, right? If you don't give exercises enough time, you're not going to get good at them because you're not going to give yourself enough time to improve on the technique. And as I said, it takes a long time to get good at technique, so you need to give them time and consistency. You're not going to be able to progress with overload on them because, you're basically just going to be resetting yourself back to square one every single time. And in terms of the workout plan, you're just going to be all over the place. You're not going to have a structure and you're going to be an absolute mess, right? So my advice to you when working out and doing these exercises is sticking to them for as long as you possibly can before you get bored and before you want to switch. Don't get me wrong, switching exercises every now and then is fine, but you don't want to overcomplicate things by switching workout plans every 2 weeks. So that now brings me to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I really hope you understand these points because they can genuinely get the needle moving in your gym journey and get you from a newbie to a beginner who knows his shit a little bit, right? So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment down below, and if you want to stay around, make sure you drop a subscription. I upload 3 times every week, so I will not disappoint you. And as I said, the free community is in the top link in the description if you want more help from me and you want access to a community of like-minded men just like you to hold you accountable and ultimately get you closer to your goal. So without further ado, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.